So we're going to dive into another Patreon listener question. Once again, if you are interested in participating on the Patreon, be sure to check the link in the description below and help support the podcast. And once again, we have a question here from Patreon member MassiveGains, and he asks for the Transformer Slag podcast. Love the podcast, guys. Where is Jaws D? My actual question, actually, maybe I should address this in two parts. Where's Jaws D? He's currently busy right now. He's recently moved, and it kind of messed with his schedule and his work and everything, so it makes it difficult for him to come for the recordings. But do not worry, he will be available for the year-end Best Transformers of 2019 that we always shoot live. And we will also have probably some other smaller segments in between that. So don't worry, he will be back. He says here, my actual question is, Transformers has been used in a lot of different crossovers and versus series throughout the years, from G.I. Joe, Marvel, Star Wars, Evangelion, and even Street Fighter, which I love that one. Some made sense, some didn't. What would you use as a franchise across with Transformers? But there's a catch here. It has to make sense story-wise and can't involve a franchise that's known for robots, mecha, or technology. MassiveGains. Okay, so obviously, like he's mentioned before, there's been a lot of different brands throughout the years that have had toy crossovers or comic book crossovers. G.I. Joe obviously being one of the most well-known and probably the most frequent with the Transformer brand. And you know, obviously we had the Marvel Transformers toy line, the Star Wars Transformer toy line, Evangelion did something with Masterpiece, and then we had even the Street Fighter line, like you mentioned before here too. And then, I mean, there's even others. There was like the Disney label stuff. There was stuff with Hello Kitty that they did. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff that Transformers has done throughout the years. And of course, stuff that crosses over within fiction too. But it says here that the catch here is it has to make sense story-wise, which, I mean, that could be subjectable in itself. And it can involve a franchise that's known for robots, mecha, or high technology, I guess. So I guess that phases out stuff like Gundam and a few others. The one that I actually, when I read this question initially, the one that came to mind right away that popped in my head, and it's something that I've always considered in the past, just in general, is Transformers versus Kaiju. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a size discrepancy there when it comes to, let's say, Optimus Prime and the regular size Autobots. But when you get into that upper echelon of, let's say, Combiner teams and Devastator and Omega Supreme, maybe they could fight alongside that of Kaiju. And more specifically, when I'm talking Kaiju, I don't really mean something like, let's say, even Godzilla, but maybe more the Ultraman family. And the reason why I bring up Ultraman is because I've always felt that there's a lot of similarities from a storytelling standpoint between those two brands. In that, especially, I mean, anyone could go back and watch one of the Ultraman movies. It was the one that really debuted Belial, Ultraman Belial, who's like kind of the Revenge of the Fallen character of the Ultraman franchise. The fallen character of the Ultraman franchise. It's so funny how his origin is, where it's kind of like he's a fallen Ultraman that then was sealed away, and then comes back and tries to get revenge on all the other, modern day Ultramen years later. And it's kind of funny. There's a lot of similarities there, and that movie came out after Revenge of the Fallen in 2009. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the creators of Ultraman over there in Tsuburaya Productions probably got inspired. I wouldn't be surprised, but there's a lot of similarities. It's the Ultramen, if you will, are a super race of beings from another planet that come to Earth and they kind of protect it and stuff. And that whole planet, M78, the land of the light. It kind of has that own little Cybertron spin on it and everything. And I mean, even the Ultra Father kind of really is, like, in a lot of ways, Alpha Trion. And it's just there. And then you even have like Ultra King, that's kind of their Primus in a lot of ways. It's very, when you really know the lore, you see a lot of connections there. And I could see that if you ignore the fact that Ultramen in general are, taller than skyscrapers, and if you kind of shrunk them down a little bit, just a little bit, and this is something that's not foreign to the Ultraman brand, The recent Netflix series, which was based off of the sequel manga, they kind of shrunk it down to make it more street level, if you will. The characters are more, normal sized. But Ultraman also, in general, could always, change his size at will. So it's something that if the kaiju were a little smaller, the threat was a little smaller in stature, and the Ultramen were a little smaller, you could really do a fun little story with the Transformers. And it's just a story I could imagine, kaiju come, to, let's say, Arizona, where G1 happens. Let's say we'll do it in the G1 continuity because we're going to go with a brand that is the most recognizable. Take the G1 continuity, have a kaiju show up, wreak havoc that's almost on the level of, let's say, a monster pretender, and then, have the Autobots intervene, have problems with it. Ultraman shows up. You have the classic, like, is this guy also with the monsters? He doesn't look like us. He doesn't look like a human. Let's attack him too. And then obviously there's obviously like an issue, and then Ultraman has to end up, teaming up with the Autobots, but then of course it doesn't work out. And while on at the same time, the kaiju bad guys, team up with the Decepticons. Maybe we could involve then monster pretenders or some kind of, like similar kaiju tech. Maybe in that odd continuity, you could say like, oh, maybe pretender tech was created by working with the kaijus. Again, it's all a standalone continuity. And ultimately, in the end, Ultraman teams up with Optimus Prime, and we get a, double spectrum beam attack, and takes out the kaijus and Megatron and whatever. And then you could do like a hook, at the end of that 6-issue limited series or whatever. You could have a hook at the end of it that, Ultraman goes back to his home planet after leaving Earth. And when he gets back to, the Land of the Light, M78, and there's Unicron about to eat his home planet, and you could put it on a cliffhanger with that and involve Unicron or something, as he slowly makes his way to Earth. Who knows? There's so many ways one could tackle it. Maybe Unicron, in a very Galactus kind of way, instead of, eating the Land of the Light, he gets a fallen Ultra, which becomes Liddell, and he becomes his, herald, if you will. And then there's so many ways this could be written. I'm giving this away for free, but there's so many ways this could be written easily. And it's just because there's so many parallels between those two brands and stuff. So that's one brand that I could really see being used, and it's not known for robots. Ultraman, while it does have some kind of, I guess you could say it kind of has technology, but really it's like the one or two ships that say like whatever science team is assigned to them might have, so it's not really technology. And robots, I don't know. Ultraman always falls on that fine line that it's not really mecha, it's not really power suits, it's an alien in a lot of ways. It really is. I mean, he looks like, Iron Man. He looks like a robot suit, but he really is. That's his flesh and blood in a lot of ways. That's how they look. They were transformed by, their core of their planet kind of going supernova and transforming all of them. So they have a very interesting history. And the funny thing is too, in a lot of ways, the core of their planet is like a central plot point to the survival of their planet. In the same way you remove Primus and, all of Cybertron gets messed up, you remove the light core of the Land of the Light, and it's the same thing. That planet goes cold. So it's, it's funny how many things just kind of connect there. And I know I'm forgetting some, but there's a lot that could be. So I'm going to go with Ultraman. I think Ultraman, and considering that, recently in the news, Ultraman is going to have comic books now done with Marvel. So it shows that Ultraman is now going to have a little bit of an American presence after quite a few years of just kind of been absent in the public eye. We get the odd DVD box set here and there, but he's really, from a mainstream standpoint, has been out of the public eye for a while now, and outside of the Netflix series being translated and stuff. So, who knows? Who knows what the future could bring? But it would be kind of cool to involve Ultraman because it just kind of would gel very well. But thanks again for the listener question, MassiveGains. Really good question. And once again, if you are interested in asking a question, be sure to check out the Patreon. And if you just enjoy what we do here on the podcast, check out the link in the description below. We have all kinds of different tiers. You'd be surprised what $1 could get you. We have a cool Discord where I have a whole bunch of people that hang out and talk Transformers. So be sure to check out the description below, the Patreon listener question link below, and check out all our cool stuff that we have to offer here at Transformer Slag.